Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Well, this month's fest may change your mind. Apparently, 6 out of 7 tropical vacations end in disaster, at least according to these movies. Welcome to the Oktoberfest podcast. I am Jeff, your host and cinematic castaway, and this is IslandFest. Somehow we're already heading into summer this year. Time flies when you're force feeding yourself movies and using the ensuing brain mulch to fertilize content, I suppose. With vacation season approaching, I decided it was high time to hit the high seas and visit some islands. Now, a keen observer may notice that not all these films take place on islands, but a keen observer will also notice that I don't allow my thematic threads to be questioned and get all the way off my back about that. Thailand is island adjacent, okay? Besides, it's vacation time. Relax, grab a boat drink, and try not to get stranded on a desert island or eaten by wildlife. We kick this binge off with an easy watch, 2004's 50 First Dates, starring Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. Billy Madison and Josie Grossi had already proven their on-screen chemistry worked in Wedding Singer, so why not send them to Hawaii and make money between beach days? If you somehow missed this pretty well-known flick, the story centers on Henry Roth, an animal doc at an Oahu fish museum who mostly works with walruses and one adorable penguin. He spends his off days working on repairing a boat to escape from paradise and freeze his nuts off studying the big tusked bastards in Alaska, or wheeling desperate tourist ladies because apparently lots of women travel alone to the island to hook up with dudes from Brooklyn. Barrymore is Lucy Whitmore, a local who was in a car wreck that left her physically A-OK but neurologically damaged, unable to make new long-term memories. It's like a reverse Groundhog's Day situation. One day, while Mr. Deeds is testing his dinghy, the little boat breaks and he ends up stranded. He hits up an eatery off the North Shore and encounters Charlie's Angel tinkering with some waffles, like well-adjusted adults are wont to do, and makes his move. Of course, as this is rom-com world, the two connect immediately. But when Happy Gilmore returns to the diner to meet up with Firestarter, she doesn't remember him and freaks out. He learns about her condition and spends the next montage of the movie trying to meet cute with her over and over again. Apparently, his job is extremely lax on attendance. Eventually, he has the bright idea that never occurred to anyone else to actually tell her she has brain damage rather than try to trick her every day, and they start a real adjacent relationship, until she decides she's holding him back from having a full and happy life because she re-instances every night and drops him like Sandler dropped the idea of making good comedies after 2010. Dejected, Offerman gets ready for his big boat trip, but makes a last-minute detour to visit his ex who can't remember him, discovering that somewhere deep in her cracked walnut, she does have a record of him, and she's been making art of his head. The two embrace, and we cut to Lucy waking up in a strange room and getting caught up on her life again, this time including their wedding, her giving birth, and when she steps out of the room, the happy family is waiting on a frigid boat by a glacier. Happy endings. Until her kid starts pulling shenanigans when she's a teen and, like, hiding mommy's morning reminder tape. These things never hold up to scrutiny. The movie has a solid supporting cast, and also Rob Schneider, because of course he's here in Tonga face. Sean Astin is here. Samwise is in beast mode as Lucy's roid-using bodybuilder brother, sporting mesh shirts and a weird accent. Dan Aykroyd shows up as Lucy's brain doctor in a clinic sponsored by Tommy Boy. Alan Covert, star of monster hit Grandma's Boy, pops in for 10 seconds as Tom, but he doesn't remember. Deuce Bigelow is Henry's best bud, an unstable islander named Ula, who has a ton of kids, a fat wife, some wild theories about sharks, and some legitimately funny bits. But I still don't like him. The movie is still amusing, despite the decades. Most of the jokes still land, though you can do it wearing fake tanner and posing as an islander hits a cultural appropriation line that we've been trying to draw in the sand. I think this may be where Sandler got the idea to start filming his pals on vacation and call it a motion picture. He'd go on to refine the formula through like 11 grown-ups films. I guess some people just find their destiny and follow it. Like Henry was called by the Walrus Cruise, or a little animated island princess was drawn to the sea. Yeah, I watched Moana again. Not the unimpressive sequel or the upcoming live-action rehash, but the original 2016 banger. Jeebus. I can't decide if it's more surprising that it was only 10 years ago or already 10 years ago when this released. Unimportant. The rundown. Pre-nepotism Pacific Island princess grows up resenting her future role in communist utopian society of their island and just wants to be free to sow some wild oats on the open ocean. A yen that is fueled by her anti-establishment grandmother and the aliens from the abyss. When the island gets hit by blight, she boards her boat, sails across the ocean, finds future President Dwayne The Rock Johnson, and demands he put back the MacGuffin that is dooming her island. Black Adam is Maui, a demigod stranded on a tiny island with magical sentient skin cancer presenting as tattoos. Apparently, despite being awesome and good at everything, he has spent 1,000 years stranded on this little pile of sand, unable to convince a friendly dolphin to give him a lift. Moana and Red Notice take to the water and have magical musical adventures, encountering angry nuts doing a Fury Road impression and an ostentatious case of crabs, before a cliche-packed third act breakup and eventual victorious end to their journey. Now, the music needs to be mentioned because it'll be stuck in my head for a month. Alexander Hamilton himself wrote it, along with composer Mark Mancina and Samoan musician Opitae Foae, who had full studio support for creative control. You don't need to understand the lyrics to know what's going on in some of these. Alea Cravalho, a 14-year-old with no previous credits, does all the voice work for Moana herself and absolutely crushes it. It's not that hard to top Dwayne when it comes to vocal chops, but you're slapping Jermaine Clement as David Bowie as a crab in there, and she can keep up with Flight of the Conchords. Unlike Sandler's rom-com, most of the cast in Moana is of Pacific Island descent. Clement is Maori, along with Temuera Morrison and Rachel House, who play Chief Guy and Whack Job Granny. Of the top listed cast, only one isn't an Islander, and it's the amazing Alan Tudyk, who is voicing a chicken. Alan Tudyk is awesome. Boiled down in less comedic terms, Moana is the story of how tradition alone can't define you, and gods alone won't save you, and sometimes you just have to step up and do something. Maybe there's a message we could all use a little more of. From a touching coming-of-age story to a coming-of-age story with a lot of touching. Next up, I uncomfortably witnessed The Blue Lagoon. Released in 1980 to critical revulsion, the plot of this is, well, fine, if thin and unbelievable. A Victorian-era ship bound for San Francisco catches fire in the middle of the Atlantic, and a man is separated from his young son and orphaned niece, who end up in a lifeboat with the ship's cook and somehow instantly lose all of the other survivors. The trio find themselves on an uninhabited-ish island near Fiji, and Captain Cook shows the children how to make knots and build shelter and get food before getting drunk and going for a swim. The two stranded kids somehow survive on the island, building a rather impressive hut, going for a lot of naked swims, eventually becoming teens, discovering sex, accidentally procreating, ending up adrift again, and then maybe dying just as they're discovered. It's more uncomfortable than it sounds. Brooke Shields was 14 during filming, which mostly happened with her topless, with her hair glued to her chest. The younger versions of them didn't get that level of modesty and were just filmed from underwater swimming in the buck for way too much time. I don't know what they were using for cameras back in the day, but the film quality is legitimately impressive for the undersea shots, especially the ones not pointed up at nude children. The movie is full of really nice shots of sea life in the reef. Fishes and turtles and dolphins and urchins, oh my. The island itself is beautiful too. Waterfalls and untouched forests and clean beaches and sacrificial altars. Alright, Chekhov's unfired gun here. The only plot point in the movie other than kids try to exist while undergoing unguided puberty like feral assholes is that there's an altar somewhere away from their settled location where some neighboring island folk come to perform human sacrifice. This never pays off in any way. The tribe never discovers the children. There's never a fraught chase scene. They don't get taken in by mostly friendly natives. It goes nowhere. In a movie that largely goes nowhere for the whole runtime. But there are sharks? Look, The Blue Lagoon is a great nature film ruined by someone's icky fetishism. I don't know how they made 2 more of these. Some stories are better told in books. This is based on a novel from 1908, but I think the best version of the story is a 5-minute parody in Top Secret. The real takeaway from this flick is that it's just never safe to take an overseas trip from an unreliable carrier. Had they used a more reliable Victorian-era travel agent, the kids could have grown up as incestuous weirdos in San Francisco instead of an island paradise. And look, checking your travel vendors isn't just a way-back-when problem. Even today, you get buses that run late, flights that don't take off, or get canceled, or hold your luggage hostage for 12 goddamn hours because of incompetent asshole, Or, crash on an island in the middle of nowhere. At least Robin could bitch directly at her pilot in 6 Days, 7 Nights. Directed by Ivan Reitman, the acclaimed director of Ghostbusters and Twins and Kindergarten Cop and Dave and Junior and wait, this can't be right. Father's Day? That piece of shit with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal that managed to make two of the most charming actors on film unlikable? What the hell, Ivan? Well, after he dropped that deuce on us, he scraped up an unenthusiastic Harrison Ford and made 6 Days, 7 Nights in 1998. And Hesh as Robin, a high powered magazine something in New York, dating Ross from Friends after he stole some of Sean Astin's vitamin supplements. I don't remember the Swole Schwimmer era of Friends, but it must have been a thing because he is beefy here. Still a dweeb. Anyhow, Melman surprises Psycho 98 with a trip to the tropics. She tries to use work to back out, which should be a red flag for him. But he's gone over her head and cleared it with her boss already, so the two head to a fictional island of Makatea by way of Tahiti. They need to take a puddle jumper to their ultimate island paradise, and their pilot happens to be an elderly-looking Harrison Ford. See, this movie is a multiverse sequel to The Fugitive, where Richard Kimball was never exonerated and escaped to the South Pacific, where he changed his name and became a short-haul pilot calling himself Quinn Harris in Ford. Now, this is never explicitly said, but I declare it to be so. He didn't kill his wife, we don't care, but he does fly the obnoxious New Yorker and his overexcited Labrador boyfriend to their temporary Eden, along with his lady friend who is probably half his age. We establish a lot of things in a very short scene here. Quinn is a pilot. His plane is junk. He does not get along with Robin. He likes the younger ladies. The last one's going to be important later. On the island, Dr. Geller proposes to Ellen DeGeneres' girlfriend despite the fact that she's really not that into him, and she accepts despite the fact that she's really not that into him. The next day, her boss somehow manages to call her at a hotel bar in the middle of the Pacific in the 90s and tells her, she's going to need her to come in on Saturday. And did she get the memo about the new cover sheet for her TPS reports? She's got to get to Tahiti to supervise a photo shoot that could probably happen without her, but it's so close and she doesn't really like her fiancé anyhow, so she accepts and coerces Han Solo into giving her a lift. But they get caught in a storm and crash on another island, this time without people, possibly with a sun-bleached skeleton of a former ship's cook who was left to rot by kids he saved from drowning. Ungrateful little perverts. So, Air Force One and Volcano are stranded on an island called Mata Nui, suspiciously close to Moana's homeland, Mota Nui, where they encounter a very angry band of pirates, including a very lost Danny Trejo, led by Moana's dad, Temuera Morrison? He's back, and apparently the reason he was so against his kid leaving the island is because he knew crazy assholes with machine guns would risk their own lives to shoot you just for knowing they exist. A couple of days surviving the island, the pirate chase, and doing rom-com cliches to replace loathing with lovin', and the old man and the C-list celeb rig up the garbage plane for water skis and make their escape. All's well that ends in an engagement that is over the same week it starts, and a new relationship built on adrenaline and peacock meat, right? Now, the uncomfortably aged elephant in the room. Ford was in his mid-50s here. Hesh was literally half that. They make a point of her acknowledging the age gap like that clears it, but this is some serious May December shit. She's gonna break his hip before she breaks his heart. Still easier to watch than a couple of feral tweens accidentally themselves into a pregnancy on Naturalist Island. I think the real message I'm getting from all the movies in this fest is that life in the tropics isn't all boat drinks and fresh fish. There's a reason people come back to civilization after a week or so. Everything wants to kill you out there. It's a bunch of tiny Australias. Sandler's living a charmed life in Hawaii. No committed relationship, job that lets him pretend to be kidnapped whenever he wants. He still goes through the considerable effort of refitting a boat himself to escape. Must be something going on there. Moana's Mota Nui is a perfect little paradise until blight strikes the trees, they overfish the coastlines, and they're all going to starve. And that's without a hurricane or tsunami wiping their little grass hut society off the rocks. The Blue Lagoon situation. Those kids are dead. Forget all the swimming and the fruiting and kids hanging dong, Hakuna Matata, whatever. The wildlife out there, infections, weather, they do not survive long enough to have a kid, let alone delivering that child and keeping it alive for a year. Not happening. They'd be as sun-bleached as poor dead Patty. 6 days, barely charted island, beautiful, remote, infested with machine gun-wielding pirates. Okay, that one's not so bad if you take your own machine gun. Then, might be a valid retirement plan. The open ocean, the wonderful views, all the yachts you can steal. Sometimes you think you've plotted the perfect crime, only to have it interrupted by a sea monster and the substitute. The point is, you can only escape reality for so long before it climbs out of a toilet and bites you in the ass, and then drags you into the toilet. That seem oddly specific? Maybe familiar? If so, you're one of the 8 people who has seen Deep Rising. Released in 1998, written and directed by Stephen Sommers, this Treat Williams Famke Janssen joint made an astounding $11 million on a budget of only $45 million. Sommers would go on to write and direct the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, the Hugh Jackman Van Helsing flick, and the completely garbage G.I. Joe thing in 2009, as well as one of my favorite obscure movies, Odd Thomas, with Anton Yelchin, based on a Dean Koontz book. He recovered from this just fine, is what I'm saying. Thing is, Deep Rising isn't bad. It's dumb, and it has some of that late 90s garbage CG that has aged so poorly, but it wasn't 2003, so there's still practical effects here. Let's run the plot. Treat Williams is Finnegan, a merc or smuggler of some kind, who captains an oddly sci-fi looking boat with his pal/mechanic, Joey, and Joey's buff lady friend, Body Count. They're ferrying a group of rough customers to a destination in the middle of the South China Sea, as Shenanigans has a brilliant business motto: if the cash is there, we do not care. Driving a bunch of armed dickheads into the middle of the ocean with a no questions asked policy seems like a great way to get killed and dumped into the water. The mercs are a murderer's row of these guys. Jimon Hansu from Gladiator and Blood Diamond and Guardians of the Galaxy. Wes Studi, who's in Dances with Wolves and Avatar and Last of the Mohicans. Cliff Curtis, who's in Training Day and Blow and Avatar 2. We get a good 5 minutes of getting to know your armed assailant before cutting to a big fancy cruise ship owned by the evil psychiatrist from Silence of the Lambs. Nope, not Anthony Hopkins. The evil one, Dr. Chilton. Anthony Held is Canton, and he's giving a toast to the rich folks aboard his new ultra-luxe cruise liner, the Argonautica. He brags about it being the most expensive boat ever built, which surely isn't foreshadowing. Famke Janssen's also on board, robbing from the rich to give to, well, herself, I guess. We're treated to a giallo-style shot of some mysterious hands removing CDs from some machine in the bridge that are supposed to contain all of the ship's operating systems because no one knows how computers work, disabling the big bastard in the middle of nowhere. Let's speed this up. Big stocked boat gets attacked by mysterious critters. Band of thieves shockingly take O'Callahan and his crew prisoner while they prepare to rob the boat, discover everyone but Jean Grey, Dr. Dickhead, and a handful of red shirts are dead, and then get attacked by creepy tentacle monsters crawling through the ship's hull. We get action, we get double crosses, we get surprisingly passable CG because this was before The Matrix and not after. Turns out the mystery hands were Chilton's. He did the math wrong and figured out he was going to take a loss on the gilded 1%er vacation yacht, and was in cahoots with the mercs to rob and sink his oopsie. Too bad a super angry squid monster decided this big metal thing was sure to be full of tasty meat. Standard action horror rules apply. Everyone splinters and separates and gets killed off until it's just Flanagan, the cat burglar, and the crooked investor. Even our comic relief sidekick is presumed dead. Everwood and Zinnia Onatop rigged the hijacker's busted speedboat with some torpedoes and set it to crash into the crippled boat-turned-monster nest and bolt on a skidoo. But our villain doesn't get the memo, unfortunately, and takes a leg-breaking leap onto the self-driving boat, which gives him a real short ride before turning around to vaporize him along with his boat and the beastie inside. Houlihan and Taken's ex-wife end up on a deserted island making out, only to be joined by the miraculously alive Joey, who gets in one last quip before the jungle shakes and we hear some King Kong yell, and the credits roll. But the box office bust this movie was, we never got the sequel revealing our new friend. Too bad. Sommers originally wanted Harrison Ford for Finnegan and Claire Forlani for Trillian, Famke Janssen's role, which is a chat client and not a name. This is the same year Ford made 6 Days, and Brandy Svenning is even younger than Anne Hesh, so we all dodged a bullet here. Forlani passed to do Meet Joe Black, where she dated Brad Pitt, who was death, but only for her career. The movie's actually pretty fun. It's dumb as all hell, but everyone does a capable job, and the pace moves. It's nothing exceptional, but it deserves better than to be forgotten at the bottom of a Walmart discount DVD bin. Do they still have those? When Witness dropped out of the production, the budget got cut, and this little gem of nonsense became a footnote. Barely remembered. Kind of like the next movie on my list. Tell me if you heard this one. Tom Hanks, John Candy, and Rita Wilson walk into a movie production in Oaxaca, and no one talks about the product for 40 years. Volunteers, released in 1985, is packed with prestige to beat. Tom Hanks was getting a name from Splash, a set he shared with John Candy, who'd already been a hit on SCTV and had roles in Blues Brothers, Stripes, and Vacation. It's directed by Nicholas Meyer, who wrote and directed 2 of the even-numbered Star Trek movies. It was written by the guys behind Cheers, and it is super fucking weird. Joe of the volcano is Lawrence Bourne III, an arrogant rich prick graduating from Yale who owes a lot of money to some not very nice casino men. When his father refuses to give him the money to repay the debt, he flees from the thugs sent to collect by swapping places with his roommate on a flight to Thailand with the Peace Corps. I suppose now is a good time to mention this is set in the 60s and is likely full of Cold War references and paranoia that I definitely don't get. On the flight, he meets Tom Tuttle from Tacoma, played relentlessly by Uncle Buck. While the plane full of peacenik dweebs sing Puff the Magic Dragon, Sleepless in Seattle flirts with the sky waitresses, collects a bunch of sugar packets, and eventually finds an open seat next to his once and future bosom buddy, Rita Wilson, as Beth Wexler. Larry spends the next 10 hours pretending to be Kent, his displaced roomie, and chatting up the idealistic young lady, only to reveal his game after being shot down when he asks her out as the plane lands. Unfortunately for Beth, they are stationed together for the next 2 years. Unfortunately for Larry, his father pulled some strings and made his Peace Corps stint official. Fortunately for everyone, a turned to 11 Tom Tuttle from Tacoma is going with them. Their mission is to build a bridge in a small village surrounded by opium fields. They encounter black market smugglers, CIA hatchet men, communist Chinese military, tigers, leopards, monkeys, close-up magic, ladies with killer fingernails, and Long Duck Dong from 16 Candles. Gede Watanabe is here as Toon, the only villager who speaks English. Unlike his role in the Hughes flick, Toon doesn't make me cringe decades later. He's the most competent person in the movie somehow, and rather than punching down at the natives, the movie has mostly taken swings at American ignorance. Well, Tom Tuttle from Tacoma gets abducted and immediately brainwashed by the Chinese Revolutionary Army, who want him to build the bridge so they can claim it and take the surrounding area. You've Got Mail is enlisted to build the bridge by the black marketeer, who wants it to move more product and promises him a ticket home and enough money to pay his debts. Our doe-eyed heroine wants to build the bridge because it'll help the people of the village, or at least that's what her secret CIA crush tells her, before going nuts, talking to his knife, kidnapping her, and taking her to the black market hangout, which is full of Japanese paper walls for some reason. Look, this shit gets off the rails. This movie is full of talent and is shot competently, but tonally it is all over the place. It's a fish out of water tale about a spoiled rich kid finding his way. It's a romantic comedy. It's a Cold War satire. It's got a scene where the characters on screen read subtitles from another character's lines. And that's probably a big part of why it's forgotten. There are amusing moments, but it isn't able to pick an identity and ends up a mess. On the upside, Hanks and Wilson connected on set and have been married for like 35 years. So something good came out of it. A couple years later, Hanks would do Dragnet and then Big and become an A-lister among A-listers. John Candy would end up in Spaceballs and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles in the same year and cement his place in comedic history. But for this weird, brief moment in 1985, they were in a totally forgotten oddity building a bridge in a jungle. The Great MacGuffin Bridge lasts for about 2 nights before our heroes decide to destroy it to save the town from being subjugated by the commies, the CIA, or the smugglers. A lot of work and resources into a project that immediately becomes a liability. At least they weren't trying to do something crazy, like cloning extinct carnivores to create the deadliest amusement since Action Park. I couldn't watch a slate of movies about Island Paradise without the biggest one. Spielberg's 1993 juggernaut, Jurassic Park. You know this movie. I shouldn't need to call out much here. Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson, Newman. A great cast shot by a master director based on a great novel by a celebrated author developing brand new technology that spawned a new era of imaginative film, and an absolute assload of complete low-effort garbage. We'll circle back to this. The plot is baked into the zeitgeist. God creates dinosaurs. God destroys dinosaurs. God creates man. Man destroys God. Man creates dinosaurs. Dinosaurs eat man. Woman inherits the earth. All right, I can do a little more than that. In the Mouth of Madness and Admiral Haldo dig up dead animals. They get recruited by Kris Kringle to evaluate his super secret new theme park out Costa Rica way, just 2 turns and a quick 100-mile helicopter ride away. How the hell did he expect people to get there? A 5-day boat trip before a week-long park stay that is basically a life or death stakes series of Survivor? I don't see parents signing their kids up for that. Anyhow, they meet up with Brundlefly and the blood-sucking lawyer and get hauled out to Paradise Park, now populated with all variety of formerly extinct flora and fauna thanks to technobabble and dead mosquitoes. After a whirlwind tour of the visitor center, they meet up with a couple of children. and go on a very high-tech tour of the park using EV Jeeps about 30 years before Jeep started offering EVs to the public. Billionaires get everything first. Of course, we don't have much of a movie if everything goes to plan. A storm is brewing, causing most of the island staff to catch boats to safety. It's not safe for the staff, but the guests are okay. And greedy hacker Nedry is planning on using the skeleton crew and tour distraction to steal intellectual property for the competition. He must have missed a semicolon in his script somewhere, however, because he somehow takes down security throughout the whole park. Dinos do dino things. The group gets separated, the children in Event Horizon wander the wild frontier, while a bare-chested Jeff Goldblum makes us all question assumptions for decades to come, and the inside kids work to get the park back online. Half the crew gets eaten by raptors, T-Rex saves the day, and our survivors make the great escape. It's a good movie, and it mostly holds up, though 4K doesn't do the aging CG any favors. The practical dinosaurs are still amazing, the Williams score is iconic, I can name that tune in 2 notes, and the performances are excellent. Even the kids don't suck, though Lex quit acting to become an artist. Okay. There are some things that don't quite click under scrutiny, though. All of Wayne Knight's computer dialogue is nonsense, but in '93 nobody knew anything about computers. Still, I don't understand why Hammond thinks calling Nedry's people in Cambridge is going to help them out of this jam. They ain't down into AOL and remoting in to figure out what the hack did. This is just bad infosec across the board. Of course, there are all the deviations from the novel to consider as well, but the real sin of Jurassic Park is its legacy. Yes, amazing things came from the advent of CGI, but just mountains of low-effort, mid-budget slop have been generated using the tech. People used to have to build a thing if they wanted an effect, and even if it failed, it was interesting. It's a lot more fun to see a broken puppet than a janky CG critter. I'm talking to you, George Lucas. And then there's the direct legacy. Every Jurassic Park sequel sucks. The premise seems so easy, but they all play like every executive at Universal gets to put 2 scenes into each one. Disjointed, stupid, nonsensical, and yet they're an alchemist's dream, spinning dog shit into gold bars. Every time they release another Jurassic turd, people flock to see it, and it makes $1 billion, while audiences generally agree it was at best a passable spectacle, and really, it's Fancy Feast cosplaying as Pate. But hey, you can't always predict the future. Things don't always work out like you'd expect, be it movies with talented actors, or island vacations, or stopping for a plate of spam and eggs. Or taking a vacation to gawk at ancient carnivores that are just itching to discover what people taste like. And there we have it. Our little island journey comes to an end. From Forgetful Lucy to Princess Polynesia, cameras creeping on castaway kids to Dr. Jones playing doctor with his daughter's friends. Giant squids and guns and cocaine to Thai jungles and, well, guns and cocaine. And finally, big lizards that probably had feathers. I think we covered a lot of ground here. That'll do it for this fest. I hope you've had a nice trip. If not, feel free to lodge your complaints directly into the circular file. Got a suggestion for how I can do this less bad? Movies I should cram into my brain? A fest worth feasting on? Let me know at octoberfestcast@gmail.com or subscribe and comment at octoberfest.substack.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep it on island time.